Hi there. Okay, we've got another interview.
Do you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is? Here, I'll answer your questions. He's her attorney. He can't answer them.
Your first name and last name?
My name's Paul Steed, and if you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is, I'll answer tons of questions about her. I know my dad. Hey, Dad, come here. Come here. My dad has a file at home that's probably about 2,500 pages of records from court filings and just huge amount of documentation about Jodi Hildebrandt that we will share with everybody. I want you to know the same court that has ordered us not to share these documents is covering up this racket that Jodi Hildebrandt had with the Mormon Church in the 4th District, Utah County Court.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me on This Week in Tyranny. I am your host, Conrad Rogas. I'm very glad to have you here with me for episode 119th of This Week in Tyranny. It's Sunday, March 16th, 2025. So this will be a episode about Ruby Franke and the documentary that came out, Devil in the Family. It's not going to be much of a review, although I have watched it now, these 3 episodes, and I want to bring to light what I think is missing. It's a lot of psychological, emotional, spiritual analysis, just the kind of stuff that's my specialty. My real takeaway from the series is, of course, it was not what was shown, but what was not shown. It was what was unexplored, what is omitted. This is just kind of on brand with what I do, talking about the occult, talking about the hidden in society. But really the main takeaway is going to be, when it's all said and done, is that when we don't understand the human mind, we don't truly understand the causal factors of abuse and the societal structure under which the abuse happens, then we're doomed to repeat history. This is the thing. As you guys know who know me, this is not a topic I like. I don't like talking about children being hurt, being exploited, being abused. It's rough, but it needs to be done. Now, I'd like to begin by saying thank you to John DeLynn and the Mormon Stories podcast. First of all, because that's how I first came across this story, Ruby Franke's story, about a year ago. Then I learned about Jodi Hildebrandt, who is currently in prison for aggravated child abuse, along with Ruby Franke. I learned about them and the link to the Mormon Church in general, which I really was not familiar with. Not as much as I am now. And that's when I saw Paul Steed, and then I heard Jodi Hildebrandt tell their stories about Jodi especially. So this is really a big reason why my channel even has 1.6 thousand subscribers, because I uploaded the video of Paul Steed on Mormon Stories podcast. So I'd like to thank John DeLynn for never contacting me to take it down. I imagine people have brought it to his attention that his material is out there. I, of course, didn't do it for profit and attention. I did it because there's no way that I'm going to let this guy, Paul Steed, be silenced if I can help it. So I just saw a vacuum that needed to be filled. So I think John DeLynn has shown that he is true in his goals and his intentions. So I'm very grateful to him, and I'm, of course, grateful to Paul Steed for his courage and his voice. The both of them. For those that don't know, Paul Steed had his family destroyed, his marriage destroyed due to the actions and influence of Jodi Hildebrandt, this Mormon therapist who came into Ruby Franke's life, and of course you know how the story goes. I'll try to kind of go over the story again, but I don't want to really, I'm assuming that you guys coming across this video know some of the things. If not, they're easily found. So I really want to get quickly into the insight and the important things. Now, Paul Steed, after he told his story, a court ordered Mormon Stories podcast to take that video down, because in that video, Steed talked about his daughter being exploited by his ex-wife and by Jodi Hildebrandt, who is currently convicted. So they got the courts to get involved because there were allegations there being made that are very serious, of course. Now, I believe those allegations to be true, which is why the video is still up on my channel. And I'll repeat this because I rather enjoy saying it. I will not be taking that video down even if any court orders me to. I'm under no obligations to, but even if those obligations appear, I will not take that video down. And I appreciate John DeLynn for handling it the way he did. And he did comply with the court order, and it's good that he did. I'm not saying he should do what I'm doing, but this highlights why it's so important. If we want to put an end to child abuse and we want to hold abusers accountable for their deeds, we need a variety of characters doing this work with a variety of different methods. He has a long-standing platform with a wide reach. Okay, it's very clean. He needs to stay clean. I don't have to stay clean. I will speak to things that will put me at risk. I'm willing to go to jail. And when it comes to protecting the innocent and the children, I'm willing to die for that justice. Absolutely. And that makes a difference, where you have people willing to do all sorts of different things and putting their expertise kind of in the areas that, you know, that they do well in, focusing on those areas. So I say that not to pat myself on the back. It's to say we need your voice as well. Creating a platform that's going to help advance what you care about in life. Maybe you don't care about the same things I care about, but advance what you care about in life. Become one of these platforms. In the comment sections is great, but not just in the comment sections, but a step further, to put yourself out there, because ordinary people standing up for what's right, that's a real issue for abusers everywhere, both individuals and for abusive institutions. So Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt are both in jail now. They were both convicted 4 to 30 years in the Utah State Prison for aggravated child abuse. Now, since it started, I'm not the only one that put forward the narrative that Jodi was the root evil in this story, and she should really be the focus. A lot of me choosing this topic this week was based on that. I knew that her role would be emphasized ever since I learned that there would be a documentary. However, having re-explored this story now, specifically Sherry Franke's account, Sherry being the oldest daughter of Ruby Franke, okay, of the 6 kids, she was the second oldest, she's the oldest daughter. I realized after hearing her and seeing this material all over again, I realized that despite all of that attention being on Ruby Franke's abuse has actually been underemphasized too. It's also been oversimplified. So a more incisive and insightful look is needed on both of these women, not just Jodi, and on Kevin Franke, the father of these children, which is why I'm going to do this in 3 episodes. This episode is going to be more focused on Jodi and the instruction, the institutions enabling this kind of abuse. I got distracted because I heard a dog barking. By the way, if you're hearing any kind of a noise, there's a bit of disco music coming from somewhere. There's a lot of movement. It's Sunday afternoon, so please excuse that. I hope it doesn't distract you too much. This episode is going to be about Jodi and the institutions that enable abuse throughout the world. The second episode, which I'll do next week, is going to be more personal, about relationships and sexuality. So it's going to be heavily focused on Kevin and about men, the role of masculinity in all of this, which was really missing. Then the last episode is going to be about the individual. It's kind of going to go full circle. It's going to be about healing and ending the trauma cycle. It's going to be about the courage, how it finally ends, this whole horrific story. So in 2 weeks, it's going to be about Ruby, and really it's going to be about Sherry Franke, and who is the opposite of Ruby in just about every way that I can see. They're complete polar opposites. So it's going to be about the individual. It's going to be about women, you know, and that's the way I see this. We're going to start from the outside of the circle and kind of the world, and then we're going to go into all the way to the individual, where the trauma needs to be healed and changed. Now, Sherry, I saw an interview with her with ABC News where she said she's seen a lot of this coverage and people putting the blame on Jodi and saying that Jodi only became abusive, that Ruby only became abusive when she met Jodi. Of course, this is also what I was saying. So I'm partially to blame there, right? Sherry says that her mom was always abusive to her. And to me, it is clear that that was the case. So I begin by acknowledging that the narrative has been twisted to take the attention away from Ruby Franke. But I'm also going to show how the narrative has been twisted to take the focus away from Jodi Hildebrandt and from the Mormon church in general and from all kinds of institutions under which this abuse of children goes on again and again systematically. Okay? And I'm not saying that anyone intentionally is misrepresenting the story. I'm saying, to me, the crux of the matter is left out. From the beginning, the series, episode 1, it's all about Ruby. It's about her, and then there is an afterthought. Jodi was also arrested for that, making it very clear that Jodi is not the main topic of this, which makes sense. Of course, this is a story about Ruby and her family. Of course, Ruby being the famous one, how we all found out about this. It makes sense. Okay, so this is not a crusade or a campaign against the directors, the writers, or anything like that. It's just that it's my job to come on here and make this right and tell the full story how I see it. So, episode 1 of this series, Devil in the Family, is called Abundance. It talks about the background, that kind of perfect Mormon environment, that environment that this family was raised in, and just introduces us to Ruby and the family, and then lays a foundation for everything that went wrong later. And starting with that Mormon culture of perfectionism.
They truly are happy, but they... Oh, I gotta be careful what I say. They truly are happy, but they are stuck in a box. There's a bubble, and there's a certain culture here, a culture of perfectionism, wanting to look a certain way, wanting to be good, wanting to be more perfect. And the reason why is because Utah is the capital for the Mormon Church. Mormons are taught that in order to get to the highest degree of glory, you should strive for perfection.
There's a perfectionist culture. This is my problem with many, many belief systems. It's this importance placed on presentability and image. This idea that a family or a relationship should portray purity, and that image is very important, that other people see that, and that by living up to that image, that makes everything okay, however you get to it. And this is not just the Mormon religion. I would say Islam is very heavy in this. The more devout, the more this applies, I think. But absolutely in the Mormon church, this is there. This is why all the lawns, all the houses are perfect. Everyone dresses nice. There's never any mention of anything bad. Nothing taboo, of course. Everything is taboo, but that's all somewhere else, right? There are so many people in the Mormon church who profit and exploit from others by calling upon this image, this grandeur and reputation of the church community, and really hiding behind that. But their everyday actions are soulless and they're ugly, but they invoke the doctrines of goodness and purity, so no one wants to go up against that image of purity, right? So they hide behind a good name. They hide behind Jesus Christ or the church leaders, take your pick. This is my bone to pick with a lot of these belief systems. The point is, you can have a well-dressed, well-spoken, polite young man or woman, and that makes you look like a successful parent. That's something that the parents get praised for. Even if reality behind the face, on the inside, the young man or woman is completely dejected, completely empty, and full of sorrow. But you'll still get the pat on the back. You'll get the applause for that. And this is where we get to Ruby, which in episode 1, it clearly shows how that money, the fame, and the attention, as it came with her channel 8 Passengers, where she kind of was just vlogging, right, the life of the family. When she became the symbol of a Mormon mom, it strengthened that quality that I see that she always had within her, which I call anti-parenting. It's anti-parenting what she did. I'm not saying she never loved her children. I'm not saying she didn't try to do the right thing. I'm not saying that she had an easy time being a mom of 6 kids, and having this burden of the whole community, right? So again, not gonna completely demonize someone from the beginning. It's just that with her, it was upside down from the start. Where the love and value of life comes from, it's anti-parenting. You do all the right things that a parent should do, but for the wrong reason. It's not motivated from that sustainable core of love. It's anti-parenting, wanting to be seen as the perfect mom, instead of just doing what's right and having that connection there and knowing what it is, that connection to the intuition, the instinct, and there really the approval of others is secondary, but with Ruby Franke, it was the primary, for the recognition of others, for the celebrating of the parent and not the child. Now, most likely this is because of the way she was raised, and this is the problem. This is the problem of the trauma cycle. Parenting is supposed to teach us a lesson about the shifting of focus. Everything becomes about the baby now. So it's not a selfless sacrifice for some kind of abstract, lofty goal. It's just love. It's very down to earth. It's a very personal and individual drive to put everything into what you love. It's just a transmutation of romantic love. It's the next logical step in that sequence of love, from loving yourself to finding the values that you love, the qualities you love in someone else, and then coming together with that to give the world something that it didn't have before. That's the idea. Now, nowhere in that ideal scenario is there concern for external approval. And that's where we see what we see is pervasive throughout the Mormon church. It's the external central authority, very strong central authority. And that's what allows for abuse and murder to happen all around the world. Not all abuse happens because of external central authority, but so much of it does. A majority of it does. So it needs to be seen as the problem. And it's not just the Mormon church, but your country as well. Your entire country, your military, where you live, Canada, the United States. I always make this link. I stress this link. It's not to take away from this story, okay? It's not to take away from child abuse, but I see a parallel with all of us. What is going on here, And I see many metaphors, like the 8 passengers metaphor, which I talked about when I talked about this a year ago. The name of the channel, 8 passengers, for me it shows exactly the problem of a high demand religion is what they call this, right? Not every religion demands very devout, the behavior, the loyalty, the resources that you put forth, the regimented routine following of, whether it's the holidays, the conventions. It's just a high demand religion means it demands a lot from you, a large part of your life. It's not just a personal relationship between you and the spirit and God, right? It's a central authority, and because there is such a strong and ever-present central authority, it does feel like there are 8 passengers in a vehicle with no driver. Nobody is actually in control of where they're going. None of them are the drivers. They're just passengers, including Ruby Franke and the husband, Kevin Franke. Both Ruby and Kevin are not self-defined. You could see this when you look at them. Kevin with his insecurity, which admittedly he talks about, and as harsh as I'm going to be on Kevin, especially in the next episode, I appreciate, I thought he was very honest and forthcoming. So I have respect for him on that front. But him with his insecurity, and admittedly, he admitted to changing who he is in order to marry Ruby, in order to be chosen by her, okay, to be her husband. That's him. And then Ruby, the need for the external validation of her parenting. Not self-defined. Their values defined from somewhere else, from observers who are not part of their family. That is where their value comes from. Always from someone else. In fact, I got the sense a year ago when I first started exploring this story and this family, Sherry, the oldest daughter, stood out to me as the only one in the family with a strongly developed sense of self. I know that's easy to say because when you get older, that's where it, it's not to take away from anyone else in her family, but it jumped off the screen for me. She gives off a sense of inner peace, I think. And that's the beautiful thing about life and children, is that joy and expression seems to be unconquerable, and it surfaces even when everything was working against it. It seemed like there should be no way, but you can't hold that down. And that's why we really need to step it up as regular people watching this, and not just watch it as spectators, is to realize this is happening all around us. How many more times does this have to happen? This kind of abuse and trauma cycles, and it happening in front of right next door, There are metaphors everywhere. Like the first video that became popular, that went viral from 8 passengers, was a baby climbing out of a crib, climbing over the crib walls and climbing out. And that's the one that blew up. And it's just poetic for me, because that is ultimately how this story had to end. It's with the youngest boy escaped the house and went and got help. He escaped the prison, and climbing over that wall and saving his family is exactly what it was. The youngest saved the family, right? It's supposed to be the older are supposed to protect the young. We're supposed to lead them. We're supposed to be their guidance, right? Well, unfortunately, it seems the youngest are going to have to be the leaders. Now, this statement is going to come back up again, but I'm convinced of this. Abusive behavior stems from self-loathing. It's self-hatred that leads to abuse of others, especially children. That's how it goes. The parents project this self-loathing onto their kids. It seems like especially so here we see both. You see it a lot with the oldest child becoming, they're treated the worst, but other times it's the youngest. Really, I'm going to think I'll save that for the future, because I want to present that correctly. It's just I made these observations of Chad, the oldest son, seeming like he was very, like he had the greatest number done on him. Like he accepted the abuse to a high degree because he was the first, he was the oldest. So the kind of the control and the manipulation, the rules were most effective then. With Sherry, on the other hand, you could see by how she calls her Ruby, right? She's been disowned by Ruby and the family, but you could see that she I don't want to say resentment, but as far as any forgiveness, it's just she doesn't expect a thank you or anything like that. Forgiveness for her just means that she can move on without being haunted by the experience. So you could tell that Sherry got it very bad. She got it the worst, right? And this is why I make the point of the oldest child, the older children, is they get most of the parents' self-loathing projected onto them, because that's what happens. The parents just seem to treat their children the way they were treated. This is the cycle, right? So I mentioned that because I do not blame Sherry at all for sounding the alarm on, wait a minute, don't put all the blame on Jodi now, because Sherry's saying she experienced all of this abuse all of her life from when she was little, and it seems to be the case. Yeah, that's what happened. Now, there are two different kinds of child abuse, and we're seeing both of them here. With Ruby, it was more so the first. It's the one fueled by impulse. Again, this is the one that is going to be connected to how you grew up. The way it is described and the way you could see it on camera, it's just what Ruby did is she would be very quick with her hands. Like she would shut like close the children's mouth and just explode on them, and just this kind of reactive violence, I'm not saying which one is better or worse. It's not the point. It's just that there's another kind of child abuse that's more systematic. It's almost depersonalized, right? So it's not even that you're acting out because you're feeling angry or frustrated or overwhelmed in that kind of moment where you blow up and you hate a child or something like that. It has more to do with like a metaphysical, systematic sense of malice against life and innocence. That's Jodi. That's what I see with Jodi. She almost does it in a cold and emotionless way. And it seemed to me that Ruby started to take that on more. And you do see this kind of shift in her behavior. It became more depersonalized. Sherry actually said this herself. She said it became more psychological. It wasn't so impulsive. Psychological in the sense that there was a framework behind it. There seemed to be a philosophy behind it. Philosophy would not be the right word, but it's more outcome based. It's more systematic. It is. Now, episode 1 goes through this whole story, and it's around 2018, 2019 that it shows the kids becoming drained with this whole 8 passengers vlogging life.
But we did see changes in the kids accumulating.
Faith and Chad today are being terrible.
You can use their faces as B-roll.
The whole reason here is because of our job. And you guys are acting like this is stupid.
The kids started to complain about everything, like, I'm bored, we don't want to film, we're so tired of doing this.
There's like no beach. It just like starts water.
It really began to concern Ruby a lot. She would describe it as they were losing their life.
Because they were starting to live like cogs in a machine as opposed to just being human beings, just being kids. Right? Because now they were getting all this money. They were getting $100,000 checks from YouTube with all of the ads, all of the sponsors. So they had to, when they just wanted to go on vacation and experience it, they had to smile for the camera. They had to act and do all this choreography and stuff, pretend. It should be an alert to all of us, because so many of us and our loved ones, I think, live like this. Maybe not to this degree, of course, but we're forced to go through the motions every day, to smile for the people, to maintain the persona and the image that is desirable. The difference is, though, we as adults, we don't see our Ruby Franke and our Jodi Hildebrandt. And that's what this channel is truly all about, is that people are living like cogs in a machine and they do not even see who is controlling them. Now, 2018, 2019, this happens. Then they meet. 2019 is when it seems Jodi met Ruby. That is when Ruby kind of followed Jodi's teaching, started taking on her language, okay? Her linguistics, saying all of these things like truth is love, right? These very glittering, vague language about principles and truth, okay? Maybe it sounds a lot like my channel, because these are these main principles I talk about now. That's what they do. This is just like our worldly institutions. They call upon a real authority, but then they redefine it. And that's what they did here. That's what abusers do now. They always do this with love, right? I think love is the most misused, weaponized word in the dictionary. It's just like democracy in America. It's supposed to mean one thing, but the abuser just latches onto that to get you to go a certain direction. What their language really means is whatever truth was submission to these women. And distortion, you hear a lot of talk about distortion, and it's just not being obedient. That is rebellion or individuality. It's this kind of cult language that was being used. Then when they scared Chad into being obedient, and he was a lot more polite and grateful, it actually shows that they that the parents thought he was fixed. And that is a horrific reality, that many parents believe that being polite and grateful is what they want their child to be. And that's what fixed means to them, that they're not acting up anymore, the problem is solved because the child obeys. They really believe this. For me, fixed means free of trauma. It means self-defined. It means being able to deal with the consequences of your own choices. That is how you fix those issues. This is around that time when Chad, he had his bedroom removed for 6 months as punishment. The first domino, what I came to see watching this, in really ending this story, the first time the world really saw what was happening is he just spoke about it in a video openly and calmly.
Have shown that they are not responsible enough to manage it. And so we don't just turn around and give it back as soon as they start acting good.
Holy.
Have I ever given something back less than 6 months?
No. My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
I was sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. This phone's been taken away since December.
When this video hit, all hell broke loose.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag for 6 months, nothing. He just said it very openly, and it's this kind of honesty. You don't even have to shout the doors down. You don't even have to pick up a gun. But starting with just saying what is happening, speak it openly and let it stand on its own. What is happening? When it comes to this crazy language, I heard the phrase "love is obedience." I believe Kevin said it. Chad might have said something like that as well. I believe Kevin said it. But whoever said it, I almost think it should have been, I should rewind and see what context that is in. Are they saying it in a rhetorical way like I am to make a point? Or do they actually believe love is obedience? And I suspect that they do believe that. And I suspect that a lot of people believe that love is obedience somehow. Obedience is based on a reward-punishment programming. The law of God does have the reward-punishment system based into it, but that has nothing to do with love. Love is beyond and before the reward-punishment system. Okay? Love is attention, respect, dedication, worship, admiration, all those things, and a million more things. But not because any law said so, human or divine. It's just because it is right, meaning it's primary. It's primary motivation, not secondary. Okay? That's what love is. It's not obedience because you want some kind of outcome. The statement, truth is love, which they say, is correct. Truth is love is correct. Love is obedience, that's shocking and grotesque to me. Anytime somebody asks for compliance or obedience, it's repulsive to me. We should follow rules because we understand them and we agree with them, but coming from within, not to avoid pain, this. And look, Jodi is just the epitome, the essence of a tyrant. She comes in, this was stated by someone else in the episode. She comes in and she says, I know how to do this. I know exactly what you need to do. Well, I see this from all societal authorities. Politicians, doctors, teachers, bankers, and religious authorities. It's like, oh, you're lonely, you're not feeling well. We have just the solution for you. And then they sell you the solution. This is the position that we're in. And this is what these kind of criminals, because that's what she is, criminals like Jodi, this is what they do. They always claim to have the answers, even when there is no easy answer. These are the people on TV that we vote for. Even when there's a huge risk, the people in these institutions, they think it's their job to shield the population from fear. And this is why We heard the messaging that we heard during the pandemic, and a lot of the real risks that we found out years later of certain things that were happening, we weren't told them. Because we don't get that respect. They shield us from it, okay? This is why we don't know the truth about what goes on in the world, because it's a common belief in higher echelons of society that the common man and the common woman, they're just trouble. They're just meant to be kept away from important decisions because they wouldn't be willing to make those decisions anyway if they knew the risk. And the key there is those simple solutions that they slide you. Having a solution for everything. And this is what Jodi showed she was very talented in doing. This is how she embedded herself into these families. It's not only Ruby Franke's family, as we heard from Adam Paul Steed. But episode 1, it starts and ends with Sherry. And Sherry making it clear that this was Ruby and not Jodi. Saying, I wouldn't blame that on Jodi. And again, my problem is not with Sherry or her account of what she experienced. My problem is these children endured the torture and abuse at Jodi's house. The worst of it, at Jodi's house. And we have Jodi's niece, Jodi Hildebrandt, corroborating all the methods, all the same methods, being tied up with duct tape, being made to work outside in the extreme heat and the extreme cold. We're seeing this as well. It's when I heard that there would first be a documentary, I immediately had like red alerts going on in my head, like, oh my God, they're gonna whitewash Jodi Hildebrandt out of this story. And Jodi's influence and pattern of behavior makes her not only a danger to reoffend, but it just has to be recognized that there's an entire substructure, a structure within a structure of that Mormon church that allows abuse. It's just the case. Adam Paul Steed, he talks about how Jodi exchanged Adam's sensitive personal information as his therapist. She gave it to church leaders, complete violation of not just ethics, but the law. And in that Mormon framework, when you have that kind of information on someone, it's as impactful as holding a gun to their head, because that threat of alienation, of excommunication, being blackballed by the church, by the community, it's so real that literally are going to take your child away. And this is what happens. And I see more harrowing parallels between this story and our society in general. Just like the Mormon church, the world is dominated by an unofficial coalition of male-dominant central authority. And then our women, our wives, our daughters, potential partners, they're faithful to that society structure. Okay, that is who leads the way in the society. Okay, it is a parental male authority, and then the men, us, me, Chad, Kevin, Franke, we're following that. We're made to fall in line, not by some boot on the neck of that male authority, but by what the women are following with, these women that we want to have a family with. This is how the control actually works in the 21st century. And so this is where episode 1 ends and episode 2 begins, and we're really going to get into Kevin Franke. But I'm putting some of this here because there's great insight by Brendan Patrick, a therapist that was studying under Jodi Hildebrandt. He was working with Jodi, and he saw this happening. He saw it developing, and he makes a couple of comments, very close to the things that I want to highlight. He pointed out how Jodi seemed to just be angry at men, and that's clear that she was. He clearly identifies that pattern that we saw with Adam Paul Steed, the pattern of getting in between marriages and tearing families apart, because we saw that again and again. He said Jodi was a businesswoman, and she would prey on the weak. She would turn it into profit. Okay? I found this very valuable insight because this points out what I saw right away, psychopathy. Like I saw the psychopath behavior. They're very successful. They got a lot of money. They can manipulate a lot of people. They seem to have no remorse, no emotions for their actions, and they just want to get themselves in positions. They have this unbelievable way to succeed over and over and again, avoid detection, avoid capture, and to perpetuate just kind of just blatant and horrific abuse repeatedly. Then she started the whole connections thing. She used Ruby Franke's popularity, put her in the front of this kind of what do you call it? Like a web, like internet teaching, right? And kind of group therapy, but it's not as much therapy as it is doctrine and education. It would have been education if it wasn't, misleading information and all this kind of distortion that she was putting forth. In these connection classrooms, she had a bunch of women there, right? We're gonna hold the man-woman angle off until the next episode, but she was great at exploiting Mormon anxiety as the point. This is according to Brennan Patrick, who has stated this. Not only her, but also this other woman. There are multiple recurring characters here. So we will dive more into that psychology. What is a real man? What is a real woman? What is a loving family? But I throw a bit of that in here because as to Jodi, she seems to be a little bit mysterious when I try to find her origins. Like, what made her hate men? What made her want to torture children? And that may be an answer we never get, it seems. But she clearly follows that psychopath pattern. The pattern of successful, manipulative, influential people. They're the type of people you would last want to have any kind of power over the minds of people and over children. But that is precisely the type of person that finds themselves at high levels of administration, high levels in every part of society. These kind of people. And then around 2020, 2021, we all know what kind of a time that was. This Ruby Franke, Jodi Hildebrandt story kind of took the turn of preparing for the end of the world, the end times. There was a lot of that. And that is a classic cult technique. And it's being used on us again. These threats of the world ending. You see it with all of these cults. It was an imminent second coming. Something that is going to be imminent. It's all going to fall apart anyway. Now that is a classic cult technique that is alive and well today. Whether they're telling you it's a pandemic or they're telling you it's World War III. The way this works is because they set you up, whoever is trying to manipulate you. They tell you that there's going to be a period of harshness. There's going to be a period of pain. They're preparing you already for your standard of living to drop. They're preparing you to allow your life to prepare you to give it up, to give up your well-being, your property, your resources, okay, your peace. It's about sacrifice, right? But they say, look how much worse it's going to be. And then after we sacrifice and obey, then the ending will be beautiful. This is, not only does the Mormon church in general kind of live off of this, right? It makes use of this, but then you see kind of a cult leader like Jodi Hildebrandt, who's, again, like, she has it's like a cult within a cult, which they said about her classroom, connections classroom, her practice. And we have plenty of cults within cults, inner circles and all sorts of things. I bring that to you because in May of 2021 it seemed to really have taken a hard shift. And that is because Jodi at that time said to the whole family, she said that she was being haunted by hooded, shadowy figures, that Satan had it out for her. And this is where the story seems to turn. Now, if that sounds far out, think about it. Does our country not constantly tell us that there is an invisible enemy somewhere that is attacking them? And always asking for our support? Because that's what Jodi did. She said she's in trouble, she can't sleep. They all came to her house. She's saying she's being haunted by these spirits, right? And that's what our country does with us. The debt ceiling, the government shutdown, the outbreaks, the terrorism, they're always asking for our support, and we're supposed to defend our country like it is our family. Exactly what Jodi demanded of Ruby and her family. So when we're watching this documentary, we're not only watching it, we're living it. And it's not to take anything away from the children and their torture. The case was horrific as it is, and there are so many of these that don't come to light. But it's true at the same time that the entire world is under the finger of people just like Jodi, at the mercy of them, depending on how sadistic and psychotic your leader is. We happen to be in the United States. We have what we have. Some people happen to be in North Korea or in China, and they're having to deal with the sadism and psychopathy of the Jodis in their country and the Rubies, you know? When this happened, and it was depicted in the documentary, even the pictures of how Jodi act like when she had these, just to be clear, it seemed like she acted that this whole possession thing was an act to get what she wanted, right? But even if it's not the case, the same thing applies. But when this happened, the bishop was there at Jodi's house when the family drove 4 hours to help her, right? Because she was basically in a life-threatening situation, really disturbed, distraught. There was a bishop there, Jodi's bishop, and he influenced the family actually to go along with the idea. He said, well, something has to happen, this has to change, because she's been, she kind of set up this possession angle before. And then Jodi, of course, had the idea of moving in with these children, and clearly she was prepared to have people at her house because of all the food she had. She was like, it was a prepping thing again, the end of the world. So she had, a big mansion, big concrete walls in the basement, basically tunnels, a vault, right? So it was like a little fortress. It all played on the supernatural angle over there, what happened. But clearly it was just a psychopath establishing and implementing their sadistic fantasy, which was to get the children, and specifically the two youngest children. Of course, then what ended up happening is first Jodi moved in with them, and then at some point, the next thing we found out, when it all ended, two of the youngest children were actually at Jodi's house. So that was all part of the process where the youngest kids became the focus of Jodi, and the abuse of those younger children didn't start until Kevin, the dad, and then Sherry and Chad, the oldest, were out of the way. You see, it was very incremental and systematic. At this time, Sherry was on to Jodi around that time, 2021, and Jodi set herself up as the victim when Sherry pointed it out that this person had her license revoked for 18 months. But of course, Jodi did what a lot of abusers do. They set themselves up as being attacked for their righteousness, that they're the victims of abuse actually. Her having her therapist license revoked, it was just because the institutions are against her. Well, this is just how abusers find their place in that nuance of corruption, because corruption is not only at one level, there are levels to corruption. Yes, there is corruption throughout the police and courts, which a lot of Mormons will talk about, that the United States government is against them. But many times, police do their job and the courts do their job in stopping criminality. They do. Then the Mormon Church has this in their history, their kind of anti-authority and opposition to the U.S. government. I won't really go too deep into that because that's historical, right? And the founding of Mormonism in Utah in general. But I find very close parallels here between how Jodi was on the edge of criminality, but still set herself up as being the victim of authority. I find very close parallels with modern conservatives and the deep state and Jodi, because there's corruption everywhere, right? And there are tyrants everywhere. They're hoping you go along with their story, their framing of their situation as a bigger tyrant being the enemy. In other words, the lesser of two evils. That is a very real parallel that I see playing out in front of our eyes right now. Now, as we get to the end of this episode, we gotta fast forward to the day where all of this ended, that Jodi and Ruby were arrested and the children were freed. It's August 30th, 2023, which blows my mind because I remember August 30th specifically because it was a very memorable day for me in a completely different way. Now, here, the youngest boy, he went to the neighbor's house. Really, I will save this for the later episodes as well. But that's not the first time the police was at their house, was at Ruby's house. First, they went to Ruby's house, but they needed a warrant to get in. Actually, I don't remember if it's Ruby's or Jodi's, but Sherry called the police to check on the kids, but they could not go in because they needed a warrant. I comment on the police here because I already mentioned them, and I want to mention the two sides because there's nuance to that too. One, when the children needed saving and the cops came, they couldn't do anything because they didn't have a warrant, and there weren't any obvious signs of abuse, right? There was nobody screaming or anything like that. So the one part is, why didn't the cops just go in? Well, on the one hand, there's corruption of institutions and the cops don't do their job, and plenty of these, child abuse reports, and they don't investigate them or they protect the abusers. That happens. In this case, they didn't go in. But also, number two, you have to have limitation of police power, unfortunately. Because what if can they just come into my house because somebody makes an allegation against me? I could be accused of this, and if we don't have a law protecting us, then we can be silenced. Even the activists, the people trying to do good and help take down these institutions, we could have that used against us. So this is a very tough spot where obviously I wish the police would have gone in and stopped this and saved all these children all over the place that are being abused. But the limitation of police power has to be there. And this is why my solution is the people have to step in. We have to be the watchdogs. We have to be the vigilantes. I really do feel this way. The people should have stepped in and taken the consequences as needed. That's what I would do. That's what I hope I would do. I hope it doesn't come to that point. But that is where I put myself on the line. And I'm not waiting for the police to do anything for me. I'll do it. Then the documentary doesn't pull any punches. It shows what happened with these children. The two youngest children were shockingly starved. They used the word emaciated. It's a bit of a euphemism to me. They were starving. They were separated in different rooms. It was like a solitary confinement. It was very tough. Kevin claims that Ruby called him and said that the two children, that she got arrested, the two children were demonically possessed, and that's why they were staying at Ruby's house. They found Ruby's rope and the duct tape and the cayenne pepper in a vault room. Then when the police came and tried to speak with Ruby, the mom, the documentary highlighted her cold and emotionless state. But actually, she probably acted correctly. Just analyzing her behavior, because at that point, when you're arrested, the police won't help you or your children. At that point, they've already done, they're just gathering information. Kevin also said that when he went to the police station to pick up his kids, of course, he was then interrogated. He treated the police as like wolves wanting their children. So you could see now this Mormon distrust of the police and institutions. And I think distrust of police as an institution has a lot of merit. But again, the nuance, when an abuser is working within the Mormon belief system, as Jodi was doing here, well, at that point, the police become the good guys. They just are. They're not even the lesser of two evils. They fucking saved those kids that day. And you could see some of these cops in the documentary. You could see that they got very emotional about this. They were on the right side, and ultimately they were the ones with the guns who kicked that door down. That's what it is. They grabbed Jodi out of the house and pulled her ass out. Somebody should have done that long ago. And that's why an abuser like that has to get rid of the men involved. who have the physical strength to just grab and pull them out of that situation. It's very important, that strength there. So this is the problem. There's so much child abuse and torture that is protected by police. It is. Not all, but the structure and the culture of police is so that this is never going to get exposed. Because so much of this pedophilia and child trafficking goes on with the help of police. And they're all throughout the police structure. Okay? It just so happened this time that Jodi's abuse was not within that gang circle. Not all abuse is just carried out by one group. It's all over the place. So different police departments are involved to different levels with child abuse, to different degrees. But there are also plenty of people within corrupt institutions like the police, but they themselves are not corrupt. So it's a nuanced topic for me, because as much as it breaks my heart and infuriates me how much police have protected people who torture and destroy children, police are also the only thing that puts fear in the abusers. Very unfortunately, because they have the willingness, the equipment, and the confidence in their authority to physically stop someone doing anything. The reason I pointed it out is not to say thank you to the police. It's to say that's what we need to have. We need to have the willingness and the confidence that when we see something like this going on, we say, fuck the consequences. I'm going to step in, because we know what could be going on. We know what our instincts could be pointing us to. I know that's a slippery slope, right? But that's what it takes. It takes action by regular people, the way I see it. Now, as we finish this, they're going to serve up to 30 years in prison is what is said. No. That is not what's going to happen. They were sentenced to 4 to 30 years, Jodi and Ruby Franke. The sentence is 4 to 30. After 4 years, the parole board is going to decide if they go free. It's already been a year. 3 more years, and they could be out. And then it's subjective from then on. I do not trust the objectivity of a group of people, any kind of parole board. They could be influenced. And Jodi still has money and has plenty connections. Okay, they might hold Ruby. I would expect they hold Ruby longer than Jodi. And even the framing of this documentary, although it didn't pull any punches, it stated everything. The sense that you get at the end is that actually this could help Jodi get out earlier, because they made it seem like all of this abuse genuinely happened because these women believed in obedience being a path to truth, and they believed in demonic possession. And to me, that's not it. Rather than the very clear malice and the spirit of destruction of innocence that is all over Jodi. Destruction of innocence is all over Jodi, and it's an antipathy to joy. One of the neighbors made a comment like that she didn't like to see people be happy. Brendan Patrick alluded to it. For those who are watching this from the Mormon perspective, whether that's you're faithful to the church, part of the church, but questioning people who left the church, or Christians who aren't Mormons, my message is the most important thing is that you do not lose your faith in goodness in the world, the faith in justice and love, because people often abuse others in the name of God. They abuse others in the name of Satan, or in the name of the common good, or public health, or safety and security. It's those people that are the problem. So don't get sucked into defending or attacking religion. That's how I feel. There's a reason that we gravitated to whatever spiritual beliefs we hold or held. Right? It was based in something that is real. So it's our job to pursue that, to keep going with that, and to have a personal journey and a personal relationship with the source of everything that is good in the world. Okay? And that source is certainly not the Mormon Church or the Mormon Bank or the U.S. government. It's the real God of nature. It's the real self. It's a very personal journey between the self and the God of nature, the source of everything that is good in the world, the principles of love and justice. So it's all personal, and I thank everyone who has come along this personal journey, mine, with this episode, which really has finished by now. This is my outro. I changed things up. I record on Sundays now. I used to rush to record Fridays and Saturdays to have maximum time on Sunday to record and be free to do more things. But what would often happen is that I would just waste too much time on Sunday watching sports or videos, and then I would feel lazy because of that. And then it's episode 119. Back in episode 100, I said that the second season of This Week in Tyranny was starting, and then I tried to do 2 videos every week, not just one. And then to stay tuned, I said stay tuned if I can keep it up. Well, I couldn't, I couldn't keep it up, but I'm changing things for the better, because what's the point of doing 2 half-assed videos, like unfinished videos to rush to get out there? So that's why I'm doing my show later on Saturday, and it actually forces me to stay busy on Sunday, which is good, but also it gives me more room for my personal life on Fridays and Saturdays. So thank you for staying with me through my successes and failures. I know that people watching this may think that I don't make mistakes. They only see successes on my channel. And yes, it's natural to want to present our best qualities, right? Our best side. So it was natural for Ruby, Franke, and others to want to be the example of a perfect, happy family. I want to be an example of like a warrior for truth, like a courageous, independent man, okay? There's nothing bad with that, right? But that's why being vulnerable and having the courage to make mistakes is so important. It's part of that personal journey with God. I make mistakes, and I'm going to make sure to keep making them, because I'm going to be elevating the standards for myself continuously. So I encourage you to do the same, and not to turn you away from your ideals, from your principles, and not to turn away from God. But I trust no external authority to tell me what that is. For me, there are no holy men. Not a cardinal, not John Paul II, nobody. No other man, no external authority outside of myself is going to tell me what that journey is. My authority is the love and beauty of life itself. That's it. And you can look at the joy of and innocence of children and see what it is. That's who I fight for. Don't tell me who I'm fighting for. We know what we're fighting for. And when you see a story, anytime it comes back up, child abuse has taken up more and more of space in my mind, because I'm seeing that this is the most motivating thing. It is, and more than anything, this, if unaddressed, is going to be the thing that destroys our lives. It's going to destroy our society, our civilization. If this goes on unaddressed, there's no way anything will be allowed to succeed. This is the important, pressing matter, and this is why I'm doing 3 episodes about this on This Week in Tyranny, because it's the right thing to do. Right? It's not only the right thing, but I think it'll draw the right amount of attention, which this needs. So thanks so much, and stay tuned, because next week we're gonna dive into the masculine. We're gonna talk about Kevin, all about his blame, the blame that he shares in this, because he didn't see a day in jail, but he deserves to take on a lot of responsibility for this. I'm not gonna bash him, because he's been forthcoming and honest about this, but maybe he's done his best to his capacity, but I'm gonna let loose on that. I said from day one, where's the dad? I blame Kevin the most, and this documentary proved me correct. But that's next week. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
She abused my children the same way, almost, even in a different type of abuse. I think it could be argued worse, and that was 15 years ago. And I fought against Jodi Hildebrandt with my family and everybody to stop this monster of a lady. And Jodi went after me. She went after me to destroy my life in the craziest way you could ever think of possible. Like, I was a victim of sexual abuse at Boy Scouts of America, Camp Little Lemhi in Idaho. And my dad helped us stop a predator. You can read it in the national press and everything. We changed the laws of sexual abuse so victims could come forward. We got rid of the criminal and civil statute limitations. The Mormon Church knew who we were. And Elder Helam, Richard G. Helam, was like he was the president of the first quorum of the 70, the top probably executive functioning leader of the whole Mormon Church. And he sat with Jodi Hildebrandt as they destroyed my life in this court racket, like they've destroyed countless other people's lives. And they even had the gall to order my Mormon Stories thing, where I brought some documentation off the internet saying that they didn't want me to say bad things to my children or in front of the children about my ex-wife. Well, if you're accused of sexual abuse by Jodi Hildebrandt, and if your ex-wife performed a falsification of sexual abuse, that professionals looked at the documentation and said, this is sexual abuse. This is sexual abuse. We have documentation for sexual abuse of my children by Jodi Hildebrandt and my ex-wife. And you know, this stuff was redacted in the Doppel paperwork. It was so horrible that it was redacted. And the courts just recently said I couldn't talk about my family or my ex-wife or anything, but if you have children, if your children were trained to think that your dad was sexual predator and a monster.
So I'm sorry, we came in a little bit late. Why is it that you wanted to be here?
Okay, so there are tons, and it's not Jodi Hildebrandt is the tip of the iceberg. The Mormon Church was doing this operation where they were using religious beliefs and they were using ethical therapists to enforce them, and it was an area of exploitation, and it was a horrific area. It was exploitation because it created horrible divorces that should have been normal divorces. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of families going through these courts, and Jodi was like an icon. Her doctrine